It's sort of a new day in Washington, given all that's gone down. How are your colleagues reacting today?
Well, I think most people are very excited to catch the #1 terrorist. This is a great day for New York and for America, because the reality is Osama bin Laden caused the death of thousands of Americans, and many families and those who have lost loved ones and all the first responders feel that justice has been done.
What do you know about the president's trip to New York on Thursday? What do you expect him to do while he's up here?
Well, I don't know all the details of the trip yet, but I think it's terrific because it's a time for him to meet with all the families who suffered gravely from 9/11, to meet with the first responders, to have a measure of celebration that justice was done. And, you know, President Obama stayed very focused on finding Osama bin Laden. This is something that he was committed to and that he kept really in his sights. And I think that was very important in this war on terrorism, because the reality is we need to tell terrorists that America never gives up, we never give in, and we never forget, and we will find you and bring you to justice. And that's a very important message to tell terrorists worldwide who intend to continue to attack America and America's interests.
Senator, what more can you tell us about this extraordinary operation and the decision to take it?
Well, I think you hit it. It was a very gutsy decision by the president, made by the president. I mean, he could have set some Hellfire missiles in there and destroyed everybody and everything. He didn't do that. It was a tactical commando raid, and there are risks. And you saw that with the one helicopter. And yet these commandos now, JSOC, they're so well trained. They know what the mission was. They know the time they had. They moved quickly. They moved expeditiously. And it was a total success.
Is there anything you know operationally about what he's been doing over the last few years that tells you this is a death blow, perhaps, to al-Qaeda?
Well, it's an important blow, and we will get a top security briefing as senators at 5 o'clock today. But, you know, many people believe that al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is becoming a far more dangerous organization and is most likely to be the source of an attack on American soil. So the reality is al-Qaeda has metastasized over the last 10 years. It is a very different organization than it was on 9/11. And so we have to be mindful that these terror attacks can come from worldwide organizations with very different heads and leaders.
But I think one of the most important things we've got to do, not only in the Congress but in the country, is continually focus and be vigilant, because even in the aftermath of the death of Osama bin Laden, we still are threatened by terrorist organizations, groups, movements that we've got to be really vigilant about. So I don't think it changes the challenge that we have to confront terrorism all over the world. And part of doing that is making sure that we're demanding that the Pakistanis answer these basic questions.
This is the question: how can the Pakistanis not know that for 6 years Osama bin Laden was living in this compound 8 times bigger than anything else in the area, within a mile of a major military academy? How can this happen? I mean, why would no one register curiosity about who was there unless somehow, some way they were warned off and said, this is, you know, out of limits, nobody touch it, whatever happens there happens there. And we need to find that out.
The Obama administration has said, you know, despite the questions that have to be answered by the Pakistani government, without Pakistan's help, the United States could never achieve what it did by killing Osama bin Laden. After all, we landed military helicopters in Pakistan. Doesn't Pakistan deserve some credit for that?
Well, they might get some, but we ought to find out how much credit they're due. We know how much cash they're looking for, but we also ought to find out what the credit they get is, how much it's deserved. I mean, this really staggers the imagination that all this was going on, that here was a man who killed almost 3,000 Americans in a single day, killed other Americans in Tanzania and in Kenya, and we did what we had to do.
We've heard people say that Pakistan only helps when it really is in their own interest. So in your estimation, how can we trust them to be an ally?
Well, this is a very complicated, difficult relationship. I thought Secretary Albright's comments were right on target. This is a very important country in the region. They do have nuclear weapons. They have at times provided us significant support, and at other times they have worked against our interest. It's unclear to many observers, and I've been in Pakistan more than a dozen times, whether the government itself has full control over its military and its intelligence services. So this is an issue where President Azari is putting the best possible face on it. The reality is much more complicated and much less complementary to Pakistan, but we do have to admit they have aided us in some critical moments.
Right.
How do we manage this relationship with all of these things now unraveling in public?
Well, my view is we need far more accountability on the money that we give to Pakistan. And in fact, we need to have the ability to direct that money. And I think we should focus our efforts far more on humanitarian issues. In one of the past spending bills, when I was on the Foreign Relations Committee, I specifically focused our commitments to border regions for education, to give opportunities for girls and women to be educated, opportunities for women to be in government. Because a lot of studies show that when women are part of the governing process, far more attention is paid to clean water, education, healthcare, and development. And so if we can have a long-term relationship with Pakistan that steers far more towards that direction than the military that it currently is focused, I think that would be preferable.